the wide receiver position in round 1, because the Buffalo Bills have made it pretty public that they are maybe interested in wide receivers. Maybe they want people to know that because it's a smokescreen. But 6 wide receivers brought in for top 30 visits for the Buffalo Bills. Let's start with round number 1.
Yeah.
And I sort of got 5 guys on my radar in round number 1. Now, I'm not saying that we all have to agree that the Bills should take these 5 guys, but I think these are the 5 guys who could realistically go to the Bills at pick number 27. And when it happens, you're like, yeah, maybe I should have seen that coming. Obviously, the 3 main ones, Jackson Smith and Jigba out of Ohio State, Zay Flowers out of Boston College, and Jordan Addison out of USC. Despite the fact that he's got many critics, despite the fact that the Bills have shown no interest, this is right around the time Quentin Johnston out of TCU is going to be a possibility for some teams. And again, I steadfastly believe that I think Jalen Hyatt can convince a team to use a late first-round pick on him. So those are the 5 receivers I'm going to sort of throw at you here. And if you think another one needs to be added, let me know. But of those 5, who has your interest in the first round?
I throw Josh Downs as an X factor, unlikely, but could.
Yeah.
Would it surprise me? No. Would it feel like a swing? Yes, it would. I think the one for me that is really going to be polarizing if it happens would be Jalen Hyatt, because you see a lot of differing opinion on him. I think it's pretty safe consensus that people look at Addison and Flowers very similarly and feel like both of those guys would be good fits for the Bills. Obviously, visits for both of them. So to me, those would be the 2 guys I'd probably be zeroing in on. But you can't discount Jalen Hyatt because they did have him in for the visit. So are the Bills doing that in anticipation of, hey, maybe if we don't take a wide receiver in round 1, Jalen Hyatt's a guy we could be interested in trading up for in round 2, making sure we get our guy, hoping maybe he falls in round 2. We'll see. But I could also see it as I mean, Hyatt to me is a guy that if you pass on wide receiver in round 1, even if you think he's like a round 3 guy, the Bills might be willing to trade up for him in round 2. So I think your list is sound, and I would just add Downs to the mix as a wild card.
Yeah. I'm right in the same boat with you. Like I'll take any of the first 3, JSN, Zay Flowers, or Jordan Addison. If the Buffalo Bills walk out of the first round with one of those 3 dudes, I will be super happy. I think obviously I've made it clear my number 1 choice of those 3 is JSN. I think he's got an atypical wide receiver number 1 potential, but I think it'll be really interesting with their builds to have Zay Flowers and Jordan Addison here in Buffalo. Jordan Addison specifically, because what's the biggest knock on Jordan Addison? It's a slight frame and the fact that there's maybe not a lot of, burst for a guy his size. Like, oh, you're that small, you should have better, maybe agility numbers. You should have a better 40 time, etc. Not that his were bad, but they don't blow you away for his size. His explosiveness doesn't blow you away, at least testing wise. But you look at Jordan Addison and you sort of see a lot of shades in terms of like route running and what they do. It's very similar to Stephon Diggs. So getting a Jordan Addison or even a Zay Flowers into a wide receiver room with Stephon Diggs would be super intriguing, not just from a route running standpoint, not just from a nuance standpoint, not just from like a veteran mentor standpoint, but what happens if these dudes start spending their summers together? We've seen Stephon Diggs over the course of his career, he's reshaped his body. Right? Like he was the athlete that Stephon Diggs is today is not the athlete that Stephon Diggs was when he was drafted out of Maryland. So you look at a guy and you're like, man, I love Jordan Addison, the football player, but I'm not down with that athletic profile. Maybe you get him, working out with a guy like Stephon Diggs over the summers, and he can really, like, this would take a couple of years. You'd obviously have him in the short term as a slot option, as a really good receiver, but over more time could become more than that and could sort of develop into an alpha receiver, sort of like Stephon Diggs. And then Zay Flowers is already showing an ability to do that. And as Tristan Parsons says, he already is more explosive, 100%. My question with Addison and Flowers is like, I always feel like they'll be like elite number 2s. I question whether they could ever knock on the door of being a bona fide number 1 receiver. This is my only sort of question mark. But I'm okay with taking that at 27. I might just not be okay with trading up for it like I would be JSN.
Yeah, and I think, look, we always say don't scout the helmet, but the fact of the matter is like there's a very, very long track record of successful wide receivers coming out of USC. And we know Addison was a transfer from Pitt, went to USC, and did his thing. He was great at Pitt too, by the way. So this is a Bolitnikov Award winner. I mean, like, this guy is an absolute stud.
Yeah.
And then Zay Flowers, BC, obviously not known for offensive weaponry, right? Like, you got guys like, AJ Dillon as like premier offensive players coming out of that program, other than like offensive linemen. So it is a bit of an anomaly, but for him to be what he was in that, for a program like BC that really isn't known for that, to me, it says a lot. And so to me, these guys are a coin flip. I would be happy with either. But I do agree with you. Like, I would not necessarily want to trade up for one, but let's say like JSN's gone and let's say Jordan Addison's gone before pick 25, let's say before pick 23, and the Giants are sitting there at 25, and we know they're going to have interest in one of those guys. Like, I wouldn't be opposed to moving up to 23 or 24 with the Vikings or Jaguars and taking that guy, if that's who they really liked. I wouldn't hate that.
Yeah, that's true, because that would be like a lower cost, like you mentioned at the top of the show, like a first and a fourth. So I think I would be down for that as well. By Chance comes in and says, don't sleep on Raheem Jarrett in the mid to late rounds. Diggs loves him, and he was the reason he went to Maryland. Yeah, Diggs has sort of been like a mentor to Raheem Jarrett. If we're looking for connections here too, Eric Turner pointed this out to us in the Cover One group chat, and I sort of tweeted it out today, and it's pretty common knowledge. Zay Flowers, wide receiver coach at Boston College, Darrell Wyatt, was Gabriel Davis's wide receiver coach at UCF. Jalen Hyatt's head coach / offensive coordinator at Tennessee is Josh Heupel. Gabriel Davis's head coach / offensive coordinator at UCF was Josh Heupel. So if you're looking for some connections, you have those connections, and obviously JSN, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Jalen Hyatt, they were all also top 30 visits. The only ones who are not, Quentin Johnston, which I don't have a problem with, and your guy that you mentioned as sort of a wild card there. Really no interest in Josh Downs, or at least no, interest that has been made known from the Buffalo Bills in Josh Downs. Josh Downs didn't have a single top 30 visit. I thought that was super interesting. I thought that was really weird. But who knows? Who knows? Maybe people are just trying to hide their love.
UNC sucks. That's why.
That's the NC State in you there. How about day 2 and day 3? I mean, day 2 and day 3 is mostly just like, it's like pick your flavor. I mean, some of the names that I have here, and who knows, like a Raheem Jarrett could come off the board sooner than anyone thinks. A Charlie Jones could come off the board sooner than anyone thinks. But the guys I feel confident calling possible day 2 picks, Josh Downs, Jonathan Mingo, who I think could go in the second round. I'm calling my shot there. A.T. Perry, Tyler Scott, Marvin Mims, Cedric Tillman, Rashee Rice, Tank Dell, Trey Palmer, Michael Wilson, Xavier Hutchinson, Andre Iashivas, and Jaden Reed. Those are some guys that I think could easily go on day 2 of the draft. Most, if not all of them, I believe will go on day 2 of the draft. We've got a bunch of people in on Mingo, some Tillman people in here, some Mims people in here. I know Mims is a Joe Marino guy. Who are you high on in these second and these third rounds as someone who would fit with the Buffalo Bills?
I think Kayshon Boutte could potentially go in day 2, but I don't really necessarily have him on my radar for the Bills. I think you mentioned Tyler Scott. Tyler Scott and Marvin Mims, to me, are probably my 2 favorites, with Jaden Reed probably on that list as well. I really like Jonathan Mingo. I think like people, as they've started watching him more over the last couple of weeks, have really seen what kind of player he can be. And I think from like the draft board sites, you've seen him kind of rise up on those. But it wouldn't have surprised me if he was already fairly high in NFL GMs rankings. So I definitely agree with you. Like, he's a guy that like a lot of sites probably still don't have as a day 2, but I agree. I don't know if I'm willing to go round 2 on him, but I will be willing to go day 2 on him.
So everyone talks about how this draft class is so small in stature. And that's what's sort of, I think, highlighting and bringing to the surface a lot of these bigger guys. So like you're super excited heading into next weekend. If you're Cedric Tillman, if you're A.T. Perry, if you're Michael Wilson, if you're Andre Iashivas, if you're Jonathan Mingo, if you're Xavier Hutchinson, Why? Because you have, those 7 guys have something that those other guys don't. And that is that they have some size to them, which is something that is sort of lacking. Tristan Parsons comes in and says Parker Washington. He's a guy that is an interesting prospect too. I think his athletic profile might slip him into day 3, but he could easily be another one of those guys because this draft is so weird who could go on day 2 as well. But again, I sort of mentioned at the top, this is a pick your flavor type of draft, right? If you want to take the top off guy, you have Jalen Hyatt, you have Marvin Mims, you have Trey Palmer, you have Scott to choose from. You have all those guys to choose from. If you want a slot only guy, a guy working the slot, you got Tank Dell, you got Josh Downs to choose from. If you're looking for a guy who's going to recreate what Gabriel Davis does on the football field, because you're going to let Gabriel Davis walk next year and you want to have his replacement with a year under his belt already in tow, Cedric Tillman, A.T. Perry, Michael Wilson, Andre Iosivas. If you're looking for a little inside-outside guy, you got Mingo. You've got Xavier Hutchinson. You've got Jaden Reed. And a bunch of people in the comment section are coming in with other guys too, like Bryce Ford Wheaton. Like, again, it's a crazy draft. A bunch of these guys could go. I was trying to pick the ones that I thought were sort of the more surefire ones, but it really is a pick your flavor. What do you think the Bills flavor is going to be? Because I keep hearing it's the take the top off guy.
I think it needs to be the guy. I think it needs to be guys that can separate on their own, right? Yeah. And if that's a guy that can also if that's a guy that can take the top off, and he's not necessarily maybe like a pure slot type, like fine, right? Yeah. But it's like we know based on reading between the tea leaves and kind of seeing about what Josh Allen has talked about in the past is like he likes guys that can get open on their own. He likes guys that can make moves and beat their man. Like separators are what I think I would read the tea leaves into, but at the same time, the Bills could be looking for someone like that to take the top off to allow guys like, Diggs and maybe even Nyheim Hines and Knox to work underneath a bit more. With that said, we have seen in spurts where we've had Gabriel Davis be that deep guy. We have had Stephon Diggs even sometimes be that guy. So like, what do we really mean by the take the top off guy? It doesn't necessarily have to be the bigger statured guy. Yeah. It can be a guy in that 5'10" to 6 foot range. If he's a burner like a Tyler Scott, to me, comes to mind when I think about that. Marvin Mims comes to mind. Those guys are nice balls of clay because you can do more than just that with those guys. So, like, I would expect that it's a guy that the Bills feel like can be versatile. I think is one, take the top off fine, but also can separate. Like, to me, Mims, Scott, like, those guys fit that mold. But we don't know, right? Until the Bills actually do it. Based on who they've been sniffing around with, they've been looking at these guys that are really twitchy, great route runners. And that's the type of guy they've been looking at. So we will see.
By chance comes in and says, I thought I knew the Bills type until they met with Justin Shorter. I wouldn't read too much into that visit because we talked about Justin Shorter a ton on the last show, day 3 guys. To me, Justin Shorter is the type of guy that the Buffalo Bills would maybe want as a priority free agent if he slipped through the cracks of this draft. Or number 2, like say the Buffalo Bills don't get a receiver that they want at any point in the first 3 rounds of the draft. Justin Shorter is like a prototypical X, a guy who can work downfield, a guy who can block, a guy who we just mentioned, you can groom behind Gabriel Davis. Some of my favorites, in this second to third round, I think Cedric Tillman is so underrated. I think Tillman. He's better than Jalen Hyatt. I think he is so comparable to Gabriel Davis, and that's why I don't think the Buffalo Bills are going to touch him, because I do think the Buffalo Bills like Gabriel Davis. I do think the Buffalo Bills would like to extend Gabriel Davis. I do think that the Buffalo Bills aren't going to want to roster 2 Gabriel Davises. They have to replace him. They'll replace him next year. But a team, I think, is going to draft Cedric Tillman and get Gabriel Davis type production out of him. A guy who can, stack and he can get down the field. A guy who can maybe even has a little bit more upside than Gabriel Davis, because I think maybe he's a little less stiff, can play the X receiver role. So I'm a big fan of Cedric Tillman. I just don't know how much the Bills are. If I had to pick a guy on day 2, it's probably Marvin Mims. He gives me like some Emmanuel Sanders vibes. And if I had to pick a guy on day 3, it's probably Tank Dell, because as you mentioned, despite his size and despite the size anomaly that he is, he's just such a quick separator. He's such a crisp and good route runner. So it's Mims and it's Dell that I can't get past, even though I do like my boy Jaden Reed, and we'll talk about him next week on our No Matter What show. I just don't know if the Buffalo Bills are going to have an interesting guy like Reed. Who's your favorite on day 2 and who's your favorite on day 3?
Wow. I think my favorite on 2 is Mims. I'll give him the edge over Tyler Scott. I think my favorite on D3 right now for me, even though I know you wait, round 2 or round 3? Day 2 or day 3?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. Round 2, round 3. Excuse me.
Okay, round 2. Yeah. No, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Round 2, Mims. I would say round 3 for me, Mingo. Just because I think he's going to be, I don't know that he's going to go round 2, but I've been really impressed with him. I know it's not necessarily maybe the prototypical separator type of guy, but I think there's a lot to work with Mingo. Yeah. And obviously athletically, the dude tested off the charts. And so he's my favorite. I think from a fit standpoint, it might be Reed. It might be Reed. So,
and Chris Jenke comes in and says an underrated guy in round 3 might be Xavier Hutchinson. 100% correct. Like I said, it's sort of pick your flavor. Of these guys we just mentioned, Hyatt, Mims, Palmer, Scott, Downs, Dell, Tillman, Perry, Wilson, Iushivas, Mingo, Hutchinson, Reed. If the Buffalo Bills pulled the trigger on any of these guys, I wouldn't be upset. Like none of these prospects, like I would be like mad at or upset with if the Buffalo Bills drafted. And they're also like closely grouped together that it doesn't really matter where they draft them, whether it's 59 or 91. I won't be upset either way.
I feel like we were having a similar conversation for like the Khalil Shakir, Kyle Phillips group last year. I feel like it was very similar. And we saw Kyle Phillips go before Khalil Shakir. So if I'm not mistaken, I think he got picked before.
Yes, he did.
Shakir. Yeah.
All right. So before we head out to our next topic, some connections. Again, Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt were coached by Josh Heupel, who was Gabriel Davis's coach. That's sort of maybe a connection there that you could make. And top 30 visits with these round 2 guys. The round 2 guys weren't getting a ton of love. It was Jalen Hyatt and it was Tank Dell, or excuse me, day 2 guys. So a lot of these guys that we just talked about were not top 30 visits with the Buffalo Bills, weren't guys that we like saw linked to them at the combine, etc. So it'll be interesting to see if it's round 1 or bust for the Buffalo Bills, and whether there are certain guys that they're zeroing in on or they have an open mind, like clearly we do here at the Air Raid Hour.
Catch the Air Raid Hour every Monday at 9 p.m. on the Cover One Sports Network.